unmute yourself. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Because I couldn't do it myself. Thank you very much for Laura for inviting me. It's an honor really to present at a news since having a new as a case. And I'm really, I'm excited to kind of to present today. So I just wanted to start very little bit about myself. And why this topic, why did I chose actually, why I chose this topic as my doctoral research. So I graduated from UCL last year in 2019 and did a PhD in comparative international higher education at the Institute of Education. My interest in world-class universities actually started when I first joined ANU in 2010 as an employee, as the first employee really of UCL, starting the School of Center for Preparatory Studies, then foundation that was run by UCL. And I was really kind of interested to see how these ambitious idea is going to happen, and how these how ANU is going to emerge as a global research university, and how this actually its experience is going to be translated into other institutions. My initial idea, like interest, was actually to see how schools are responding to UCL's presence in Kazakhstan, and I, as a senior administrator then in charge of recruitment and testing, I kind of observed how schools were trying to align their curriculum to kind of train or to teach their students to be able to pass the subject entrance tests that UCL, the UCL entrance tests to foundation. And these kind of, and I have always been interested in international education. When I did my master's degree at Warwick University, my then dissertation was also about internationalization, and at that stage, the Bologna process, I think, was kind of entering Kazakhstan's higher education, and then I researched the credit system. And since then, I mean, international education was always of my interest, and I really wanted to see, to actually research how the case of ANU as a world-class university, as a kind of world-class to be possibly a university. So that's why I have researched this topic, and today this is going to be really a part of my research. And as I have tried to look at this phenomenon, I would say, from different angles, and try to explore the interactions between universities, interactions between Ministry of Education and ANU with other institutions, and the dynamics between all these three. And I really wanted to see, as a highly internationalized university, if ANU is making any change, I would say, or whether ANU's presence in our national higher education context making any implications to the development of research and internationalization. So that's why today I really wanted to focus only the three dimensions of global, national, and local that I looked at in my thesis. The doctoral thesis was called "The Effects of the Introduction of an Elite Globalized University on Other Universities, the Case of Kazakhstan." So my research background, really, I started from looking at that time, in Kazakhstan, you know, the notion of research university was introduced in the policy documents, and NU was proposed as a research university. Plus, it has this task to reform the higher education in Kazakhstan. So I started looking at how this differentiation of universities into research university, international research university, into university is going on, and whether the promoting a new as a research university is making any implication. And also another issue was the establishing a new as an elite world-class degree university. So I really wanted now to start a little bit about what the concept world-class university, or in some literature it's called global research university, is. This term really started in China when the government established special funding for some of its universities to enhance the national research capacity. And what is specific here with world-class universities is that these seem to be of critical importance to mainly non-English speaking countries. And because they want to set up the sustainable national higher education due to the discourse of knowledge-based economies and the innovations. Interestingly, the most of, as you know, that the top universities in league tables are occupied by Anglo-American universities, and because of that, the universities that the emerging countries usually they want to create the universities on the model of those universities that are top universities in league tables. But interestingly, those universities that are top, they don't call themselves world-class universities. Another moment that I really wanted to emphasize is that these universities, as Rothbard called, is that it's a handful of inordinary wealthy private research institutions. So the debates on there's still not clear in the literature what actually the world-class university is. And various scholars have tried to look at it from different angles, and they have tried to conceptualize what the world-class university is, the idea of it. But what is specific here is that the notion of world-class university really varies from country to country, and it really depends on the on the national context and what are the idea of the government when creating such universities. World-class universities are mainly situated in the national context and in the national scale, and these are the universities. As I said, these world-class universities are mainly being created in emerging economies and in non-English speaking countries. As I said, since it emerged in China, and then it with China then created several projects like 211 project and 985 scheme. Now they are working on the double world-class project. Similarly, there's an example of Russia, who's also trying to create 500 project. You might know about the examples of such projects in the Gulf region, and as knowledge cities in United Arab Emirates in Qatar, and the King Abdullah University of Science and Technology in Saudi Arabia. these all, as I said, though they are modeled on the Western model of universities, of top universities in the world, they do vary from country to country and from national context to another national context. And what is here, one of the debates that I wanted to share is that this variety of world-class universities and their types, they do, though they are coming from emerging countries, they will definitely change the character and design of world-class universities. And in my conclusion, I have also coming kind of going forward is that I have also made a conclusion saying that there should be kind of specific conceptualization of world-class university depending on the context. Oh, sorry. My aim in this research was to understand the implications of differentiation of types of higher educations in Kazakhstan, looking at the effect of ANU as an elite university on policies and practices of internationalization and research in 3 regional state universities in the country, and exploring their response to this phenomenon, meaning the introduction of ANU. The 4 research questions in my thesis were how the universities in Kazakhstan responding to the government's commitment to ANU, how staff at universities, regional universities, perceive the relationship between their university and ANU, how does ANU perceive its role in the national higher education system, and what is the government's role in integrating global practices of research and internationalization of ANU within the context of the local universities. And I want to specify that the data collection was in 2017. So all the data that I'm going to present today will be of that period. And in my central argument in my thesis was that though ANU it was kind of the policy imperative was to change the autonomy, to translate ANU's kind of experience of autonomy and the governance system. But I argued that as a highly internationalized university, possibly ANU's potential effect could be on the change of policies and practices of internationalization and research in the public higher education sector. The methodology, it was a qualitative case study. I've conducted about 30 interviews at 3 regional universities at ANU, and also I have interviewed the representatives of Ministry of Education and Science, and I have also done a bit of documentary analysis of the analysis of policy documents. As I mentioned earlier, I have tried to understand this from various perspectives and try to employ various conceptual lenses to interpret the phenomena. One of these was differentiation and diversity that was being implemented within the national higher education institutions by introducing these, by differentiating universities into research, national research, university, institute, and academia. And I wanted to see the dynamics between the dynamics of interrelations between different types of institutions. I have tried to understand these inter-institutional relations between ANU and other institutions through new institutional theory. And also looked at stratification between mass as other institutions and elite and new institutions. And also Glonacle is a theory, is not a heuristic agency, which looks at interplay between global, national, and local forces in higher education. So today, what I want to only stop at Glonacle and discuss how these three forces within the Kazakhstani higher education interact. So Glonacle is a Glonacle agency heuristic suggested by Marginson and Rhodes, where they suggest that higher education exists in three dimensions: global, national, and local. They do they do mutually interact, and they can exist separately on their own, but they also interact between each other. And the focus of heuristics is on the intersections, interactions, and mutual determinations of all the three levels and domains, which the agencies who exist within these dimensions. What I looked at here, the emphasis that I kind of looked at is that the authors argue that much is known about global dimension, but very little known about local responses to any other dimensions influence on it. So, as I said, these are the key findings, and these are from 2017. So it might possibly things have changed. So what I have found is that at that period of time, that there was a bit limited collaboration between NU and other higher education institutions, and what have kind of really when I was going to get some data, I was sure that there is really good interaction between the NU and other institutions, and they are NU is disseminating its practices, but somehow the three universities that I have interviewed, kind of 100%. Was the answer that I knew at that point of that period, that they looked at it as something isolated from the system. So their response was that there is a system and there's a NU as a separate system. There was, of course, it was clear that there is a difference in legal governance and funding. There was also the cultural and organizational issues and challenges, something like related to mindset, something related to attitude, and the working environment in the NU and other institutions. What I have found was that there wasn't really clear strategy and procedures on experience sharing between all parties at that time. And the high expectation from a new, of a new by other parties, by other two parties as institutions and government, was clearly conveyed, that they really expected something from a new, something great. And another very specific thing, specific data was that throughout the interviews, it was conveyed that tasks should be adequate. And here I have some interview quotations that I don't think I will want to spend time, possibly, because I really want to talk about the from the theoretical perspective, the global, national, and local interactions. I just like scroll down here. I just kind of uncovered and these points by supported by the interview data. I don't know whether it will be so. I think I don't. If you think that you I should go back, then possibly a bit later we can talk about this. So the global, I have used this heuristic agency to interpret the connections and tensions between global, national, and local. And while interpreting the data, there were two perspectives that have been constantly intertwining. One is that looking the question through the lens of a new as an institution that has been established by the national government with high presence of internationalized elements in its operation and considered to reach global visibility, but tasked to have an effect on local universities. And second was looking at this framework in a system-wise perspective. And from this point of view, it was relevant to interpret this heuristic as a globalizing policy of local actors within the national scale or for the national benefit. And the twofold message has been identified as one is that good practices around the world should undoubtedly be explored and learned from. But the second one is conveyed again throughout the interviews is that there was a bit of criticism about borrowing from other countries, and there should be some more emphasis given to national and local characteristics and specification of higher education system and the country. So my conclusion was that at that period, again, it was like 20, I was writing up in 2018, that at that stage of in higher education development in Kazakhstan, there was little or maybe limited symbiosis between global and local. And because the regional universities has less global dimension and less active in global or international perspective, and has more dominant focus. And similarly, the interaction between global, national, and global and local forces were not clearly observable or something that is clearly manifested. So despite the government's efforts to increase the global exposure of the national system, the interplay between global, national, and local in a country-wide perspective was not quite explicit at the stage of higher education development in Kazakhstan. So my suggestion was in terms of this, that the background and Soviet legacy of higher education in Kazakhstan and less internationalized level of its system might explain these tensions between global and local forces and how these are how these dimensions interplay, and possibly for better translation of these global oriented practices into the local institutions context, state coordinated actions would possibly be of benefit and bring more efficiency, taking into consideration the centrally governed system and where at that stage the autonomy was not that much occurring in local universities. This was my general conclusion that there is a need for a clear joint vision and understanding within all the actors of the system. There's also a need for comprehensive approach in procedures and mechanisms. And again, there should be also a adequate time and resources required. In here, I wanted to emphasize that there wasn't a criticism of the kind of idea or the policy behind, but there was a limited understanding of possibly the mechanisms of how to do it. And my suggestion was that ANU as just one university in Kazakhstan I think it's too challenging for ANU to reform the whole higher education system. And my suggestion was to create similar, maybe not like exactly similar to ANU, but to give develop flagship universities in each region, because Kazakhstan is big and each region has its own specifications and characteristics. And as a universities that do train labor for their region, it will be possibly good to develop each university, like flagship university in each region. So in general, how this research contributes to the existing research program on the question of differentiation in higher education is that, as I said earlier, that I have looked at the notion of stratification in higher education, and how such universities, like world-class universities where more public funds are being allocated, might create some kind of inequality or gap between the elite universities and the other public universities. And this is actually one of the criticisms of in a scholarly literature about creating world-class universities. And here there was a idea of seeing ANU as a either separator, or that disintegrates the higher education system, or a flashlight that can be a model for everyone, for other institutions to follow. And to avoid these, as I said again, they should be kind of more comprehensive approach, and so that all the parties all the parties that are involved know clearly how and what to do. So if there is a comprehensive approach, then such more projects as world-class universities could serve as a flashlight. And in a centralized systems, interactions between different types of higher education institutions should be institutionalized and organized to